Hello and welcome to this exciting episode of the MediaTech Podcast. Today we are with Brad Ruekberg or Ruekberg. I always pronounce it differently, and I hear so many people pronounce it differently.
I know. Just take your pick. It's actually Ruekberg. It's not spelled that way at all, so I've considered changing the name. But,
gotcha. I would have never guessed it was Ruekberg.
Of course not.
So Brad here is what's your title? The head of
Director of Career Services.
Director of Career Services.
Yes.
So you are responsible for the placement of a lot of different people that go through the school with their careers. Is that right?
That is correct.
Awesome. And so today we're going to talk to Brad about something that he is probably an expert literally at by now, and that is how to find a job if you're looking for something in music or audio production. And through our time working with MediaTech, I've interviewed several different graduates of the recording arts program and several students. And I've seen firsthand that the career paths with that level of experience can vary greatly.
Oh, yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that and sort of how you approach placements for recording arts?
Sure, absolutely. So there are a lot of different paths a recording arts graduate can take. Now, a lot of them come here because they love the recording studio. And quite frankly, there aren't really the typical jobs that you see listed to work at a recording studio. Those do not come around very often. Yeah. There are careers in recording studios, but they're not the same as, applying to a job and interviewing and getting hired and having some, regular hourly, weekly salary. I mean, sometimes those jobs come around, but more often than not, a career in the recording studio entails being more in business for yourself, being entrepreneurial. And some of those grads are actual music makers themselves, composers, songwriters, beat makers, vocalists. Some of them have a number of clients. They're very good at recording, mixing, and mastering, and they have a number of clients. Either way, they're approaching it more as their own business. Mm-hmm. So then some of them create their own recording studios in their homes or establish something at a commercial business, or they partner up with an existing recording studio and they can get in there they can go in as an intern. I've set people up with internships there, and in return, they are working on their own projects with their own clients. And as their business grows, the partnership with that recording studio grows. And the recording studio, just as they're kind of getting something in return, they're then giving that engineer, throwing them some bones, letting them handle sessions. And so that's kind of, the recording studio stuff is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And that's something that maybe takes some time to really develop, into an actual lucrative career. But a lot of people are very determined to follow that course. They're very talented. And so they're pursuing, if they're music makers, then they're pursuing a range of other things with the music making, beyond being in the recording studio, from, performing to selling their beats. I show them, there's, your background and my background is similar, more in the film area. We've bought license, royalty-free music for our productions, things like Audio Jungle, First Com, all those places have places where you could submit your beats, and some of them are just perfect for that. So that's one path. Then, okay, there are actual jobs. What about if somebody just wants to get hired and work somewhere and have benefits and all that kind of stuff? Yes, that exists as well. Those would be in one area would be radio, and MediaTech is now offering more education for that. We're now offering Adobe Audition, which is cool. Board operator. There's a lot of different board operator softwares out there, and we did a pretty exhaustive research on all the ones that were out there, and most of the data told us that if we start with that Adobe Audition is kind of a basis for it, and they're not that hard, because these days the radio stations it's kind of pre-programmed boards, and you just have to learn a little bit about programming it, and then you kind of almost are just babysitting the board. There's other entries into radio stations for people who are they have to be outgoing and so forth, would be going in through the promotions end of things. And there's definitely entry-level jobs for that, where you're going out to events representing the station and all that. Oh, absolutely. And then we have the people with the voices and the on-air talents and so forth. Another path that's also entrepreneurial is we have a lot of people who are DJs. Mm-hmm. So they're using their personal networks as well as business, that morph into business networks to be doing. And there are DJ companies that hire people too. There's, at least a dozen, pretty reputable DJ companies in North Texas that hire DJs either on a contract basis or sometimes even full time.
Like that, see them to events?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Events and there's event companies that's part of their event company where the event companies may provide catering and all sorts of stuff, working stuff like weddings, and then they also provide DJs. But then, these DJs very often are just having their own business, again, following the entrepreneurial route, establishing their own business name and using their personal network to work different events as providing, having their own equipment, knowing how to set it up and all that. Then kind of similar to that as far as setting up your equipment would be working in the live sound arena.
Gotcha.
And there's lots of, there's small companies that do, just some guy with his pickup truck that goes out to, smaller venues and sets up at various places like Hat Tricks or, Bab's Barbecue or Hank's Texas or, that kind of thing, to then the larger arenas, the Verizon theaters, the Mort Meyerson arenas and so forth. And a lot of those jobs also can come through the local stagehands union, which the president of the Dallas chapter, Local 127. His name is Greg Perlman. He's actually
he used to work here. Yeah, he was my teacher.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So, he expects a lot. He has high expectations, and that's great. And we have high expectations of our grads too, that we want to get them trained so they can go out there and represent MediaTech, and then represent Local 127 if they get signed up with them. And then finally, the companies that hire the most people, where they really need hands, stage hands, which is sort of the entry level of stage hands. And then you kind of move up into actually being an AV tech or audio tech, and then actually being what they call A1, A2, where you're actually, running, the levels and so forth during events. And these would be sometimes the big concerts and performance events, but also in the corporate arena. And those are like the PSAVs and JSAVs, and they go on and on. Rhino Tech, Upstage, Gemini, AVSD, AVTS. I mean, there are so many, and Encore Event Technologies. Those are the companies that love coming to our job fair. We always get at least 20 of those companies, and they are looking, each of them are hiring, each of them come in and hire they're looking for, they'd love to hire about 10 each. They really do. They come here hoping that they'll be able to hire 10 each. They usually aren't able to fill all the positions that they're looking for, quite honestly.
That's probably the most valuable thing that you're going to hear on this podcast the whole time, especially if you're a MediaTech student. Come to the job fair.
Absolutely.
But wow, that's a lot to unpack so far. So
yeah,
I love that you mentioned production music, because I spend an ungodly amount of money on production music. I used to work at a company called Traxxas, which makes remote control vehicles, and I was the manager of their media department, and we used to do 8 to 12 videos a month in addition to the photos and other things I was responsible for. And we signed with a company called Extreme Music, which is super high-end, top dog company. And I'm sure that you have to be in the production music world for a while to get to the point of having your music on Extreme. But those contracts were 5-figure plus contracts that we were
Really?
signing for, a year or two worth of licenses. And so I can only imagine that the people that are that have their music on those sites are just making tons of money on each individual sale, but to start, Audio Jungle, I spend at least a couple $100s with them a month. And I think like 60% of the money that you spend on a song goes straight to the artist on those. I'm definitely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's around there. So yeah, for a starting musician or producer, that sounds like a really great way to get going.
Absolutely.
And it's funny that you say beats too, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ishmael Davison or Ishd. He graduated here in 2010, I think. We just interviewed him for a graduated video.
Great.
That guy is so impressive. Definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. And sometime in late January, I think, we're going to have a little mini doc graduated about Ishd. He's worked with Lil Wayne. He just did the Trolls 2 movie.
Cool.
He's doing, I forget the name of the movie, but the new Harley Quinn movie coming out next year. And he is, like you said, to be frank, like he's one of the few graduates that I've interviewed so far that are actually in the studio like every day doing studio work. But that's not to say that, obviously with everything you were talking about, there's so many different paths, right? Like
there are so many paths.
The second graduate that we shot, unfortunately I forget the guy's name, but he's a manager at one of the main hotels in Dallas for PSAV, and he loves his job.
Yeah.
He's always there. He has a crew of sometimes 100 people working on big events, whether it's big corporate events or sometimes big conventions or music productions, and he loves that. And then Jessica Sanders, she is also really impressive. She's on the road. She's a lighting technician, which is a really interesting niche that she's found, especially coming from audio. But she started as a roadie doing audio for big productions and moved on to find her passion for lighting. And she went on the biggest tour of 2019, which was BTS. She was on that tour. She went to South America, the US, all over Europe, I think Asia a little bit, I'm not sure, but she's living that life.
Yeah, she's done stuff I know with others too, like Kiss and Mumford and Sons,
so
and
cool,
all sorts of things. Yeah, that's very cool.
And that's all to say. It's just the creativity that I'm sure that you need to have once you start navigating your career. And we'll talk about this a little more in the next podcast, which was finding careers in film and video. But I think that you have to be open to different opportunities and not like lock in on maybe your passion right now is being in the studio with musicians. But like Jessica would have never known that her life goal now is to be a lighting technician on huge tour. That's her passion, and she would have never found that, if she wasn't creative about the opportunities that she was looking out for.
Sure.
So how do you kind of encourage that in students that may be so hard set on one niche?
Yeah. Well, it's really important for me to just get to know the students. I get them in their final semester. I try, usually I've met most of them before that semester begins, but I don't really know a lot of them that well until we are in that semester. And it's a lot of students. I have the most students. I have literally everyone that's about to graduate from all of our programs. So I usually have, 40, 50 students.
Wow, I didn't even know that
semester. Yes. And it's the shortest class. We're looking at expanding the length of the class. So it's challenging. And I built in that we have a midterm that's a mock job interview. And part of it is the interview skills and training. But really the other part of it that's maybe more valuable, for me at least, is getting to know them better and understanding what path they're, just knowing what path they're even thinking of going. I need to know that first. And I try to really encourage them down the path that they're on, but I want them to also be open to doing other things. So again, like if they're really, really want, their passion is to be in the recording studio, again, I'm helping them with the skills of setting up in business for yourself. But then I want them to be open to, like, how about, just having a revenue stream coming in, working with, let's say, live sound or in staging companies, because they're the ones that are really hiring. And so for those guys, that might just be a stepping stone. It sure would beat their other part-time job, I'm sure. It's in the industry, and they can make great contacts while they're doing it. For other people, they'll find a whole career that they love being at a place like PSAV because, they may really like that environment of working in hotels and convention centers. It's also a ticket to basically working wherever they want to work because those companies are not just national, but even international.
Yeah, like PSAV and JSAV, they're huge. I had no idea how big those companies were until I interviewed that guy.
You can decide, hey, I want to work in Colorado, I want to be in Colorado. Great, we'll put you in the Broadmoor, hotel resort in Colorado Springs. Or, hey, I want to work in London, if you stay with that company, those companies, those opportunities are there if you apply yourself.
That's so cool. That level of flexibility.
We talked some of the other areas that I kind of skipped over is churches, and we have some people who are really already very involved with their church, and so I encourage them to continue on with that. Then there's other much larger churches that really hire lots of people with really good paying jobs. Some of them are good part-time jobs. The ones that are just like Sunday services and Wednesday nights are great part-time jobs. The hourly pay is good. And then some of the bigger churches have, full-time jobs.
Yeah. We're right here in the Bible Belt. So
Exactly. And with some of the artists that are developing their music, while they're doing that, they can also be performing, So we talk about how to approach bookers and agents and managers and things like that. And they can also be vocal teachers, and teaching just in general for anything you're doing is always an option.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that consistently comes up when I talk to students is the phrase, it's not necessarily what you know, but who you know, right? Can you speak a little bit to the importance of that and how how a student that, or just anybody that's looking for a career like this that may not feel confident about their connections or making those connections, what's your advice to people like that?
Sure. We really try to drill into them the importance of networking. We keep saying, no, the internet is not the best place to look for. It's networking. So we try to organize a lot of networking events that we highly incentivize or sometimes require them to attend. Sometimes it takes practice, sometimes people, I'm honest with them and tell them that I wasn't always real natural in those settings. I actually feel kind of competitive and jealous of some of my peers and didn't really like going to those things. But
I feel the same way.
I forced myself to do it, and it got easier and easier. And now I actually sometimes look forward to them, believe it or not. But it's just knowing someone makes all the difference in the world. It's that hook. It's just like they write a song and they want a hook. Well, when you're making a cold call or sending an email or whatever it might be, trying to send someone your work, link to your work, your resume, if you have a hook, makes all the difference in the world. If you could just simply say, it was great to meet you at the MediaTech job fair. Okay, you've really separated yourself from all the anonymous people that are contacting that person. They're like, oh yeah, I was at the MediaTech job fair. Or let's say you didn't even meet them at the MediaTech. Let's say you didn't even go, or they were supposed to be at the MediaTech job fair and they did. That's still a hook anyway. Just like, I didn't get a chance to meet you at the MediaTech job fair, but I want to introduce myself to you now. Boom, you've got a hook.
Exactly.
It's that easy, and if you've really gotten to know them, it gets easier and easier. Or you've gotten to know, obviously, in many cases, someone else that works with that company. Again, a great hook, Dave referred me to you, blah, 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 and you've got a hook.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this may be a little bit of a side conversation, but one thing I've also learned that has been really important so far in my career is whenever you leave a job, even if it's not like a tumultuous relationship with that job, there's always a temptation to burn the bridge, right? And I have found over and over again that I'm so thankful that I haven't burned the bridges, and I can only assume that that's so important for everybody across the board,
No doubt about it. People jump around to different companies, and if you've got all of your bridges and all of your options available to you, you've got way more opportunities. So, I just look at it as an opportunity. When you leave one place, you're going to somewhere else. Or let's say you have a contact at a place and they leave and go somewhere else. Well, now you've got a contact at the place they went to and hopefully still maintain your contact at the other place.
Yeah.
And you call up and you just say, hey, I used to work with Dave here, blah, blah, blah. And again, you've got that hook.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Yes.
Is there any sort of closing advice you'd like to give people, whether they're students or not, that are interested in a career in audio production or recording arts?
Yeah. I mean, the technical skills that you learn at MediaTech, most of the employers kind of assume that you're going to have the technical skills when you get out of here. And they're not too concerned about, oh, well, they didn't teach this particular software, because they're like, well, we can train that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have the soft skills, the customer service skills, the organizational skills, the maturity level, those are the things that these companies can't really train for. So that's the things that we really want to make sure that they are developing, while they're here and in whatever other kind of part-time work they're doing, and just being that responsible person that shows up early, that you can depend on. And, the old saying goes, just showing up is more than half the job.
Yeah.
So if you're there at the networking events, if you're there at the job fair, those opportunities are going to be there. If you don't attend those things, all your technical skills in the world, they're not going to help as much as they should.
And it's gonna feel difficult for a little bit, It almost feels like a beatdown when you're like starting your career and you're looking for opportunities and you haven't found that one first opportunity yet. But don't give up. Like, if anybody's out there listening,
yes,
it'll happen. As long as you stick with it and you're building your connections and everything, it'll happen. But that's a great note to end on. Again, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe wherever you're listening, and go check out the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/MediaTech Institute. Go subscribe there. We do lots of great content over there. We do, like I said, graduate episodes, which is every 3 to 4 weeks. We do a little mini documentary about former students, and some of them are doing really cool things. We do Student of the Month. We do tutorial videos. We show off student work. So it's a really great place. Whether you're interested in MediaTech or just a career in media in general, make sure you go subscribe and schedule a free tour if you're interested in MediaTech. There's campuses in Dallas and Houston, and I've been to both several times, and I guarantee the minute that you walk in here, you'll be sold. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is one of the studios here. This is Studio A, right? That we're in.
Yes, it is.
and they have programs not just in recording arts, but also in digital film and video. They have animation, several others. I mean, they're about to do acting and makeup, which is so exciting. I'm so excited for that, in addition to mobile app development and several others. So if you're interested, check out mediaTech.edu, schedule a free tour, and we'll see you again next week with another podcast.